Welcome to the webinar. I'm Joel Stoner from Alter Media, and today we are talking about budgeting for production and post in Studio Suite XI. I'm going to hand it off to Byron Martinez, who is one of our lead developers and tech support gurus. Many of you have spoken to him on the phone. And he's also the creator of many of the budgeting features you're about to see, so you're getting it straight from the source. So with that, I'm going to attempt to hand it off to him here.
Hello, everybody, and let me just thank Joel for that wonderful introduction. And what I'm going to do right about now is just go over a list of a few things that I think we should be able to cover within that 45 to 60-minute range. So again, my name is Byron Martinez, and this is the Studio Suite Budgeting and Quote demonstration. Today is March 12th, 2015, and this demo is going to be targeting the AICE and AICP style budgeting system, which are primarily used in the U.S. But if you're from Canada or Australia or anywhere overseas and you have some type of custom budgeting, we can also accommodate for that. If you just send us like an Excel sheet of whatever it is that you're using, typically speaking, we can recreate those. So the question is, what does AICE stand for? AICE stands for the Association of Independent Creative Editors, and AICP stands for the Association of Independent Commercial Producers. And in summary, you would just say that AICE is primarily for post-production, whereas AICP covers primarily production workflows. Again, custom budgets can be also accommodated within the system. The AICE budget, let's scroll up right here, the AICE budget listed within Studio Suite is a custom hybrid between the normal AICE with some added line items from AICP to compensate for some production. So basically what happened here is that we realized that a lot of our customers who are actually in the post world started doing some production, lightweight production, so to speak. And we tried to compensate for that by just taking some of the production elements of AICP and appending it to the AICE budgeting system. So we can say that this modified AICE is well suited for small production companies that might send out a crew of 8 to 25 people to do a shoot, and that shoot will be followed by some post-production work. Again, templates are customizable, so if you do have a template that you would like for us to incorporate for you, typically speaking, I'll be the person that you would be talking to. You would send over your existing template, and we can put that inside the system. So moving on to the demo time now. Let me just minimize this. So these are the topics that we're going to try to cover. How do you create additional line items in the AICE budgeting system if it's not already in there? How do you modify those line items, add some rates to it, modify those rates, create a master budget, set a template for future use on other productions or other projects, create a simple quote. How do you export the existing budget to Excel so that you can send it off to a client or something like that, or give it over to accounting? And also, once you've already created that budget, how do you actually invoice from it and view the variances, apply any markups, and email it via PDF, and some basic reporting. Hopefully we get to run through all that within that 45 to 60-minute range. So I'm just going to minimize this now, minimize this guy, and go over to Studio Suite. So hopefully at this point you're either a Studio Suite user or you're actually using one of our demos and you're trying to learn the system, and you pretty much have covered the basics as far as how to create resources and how to navigate within the program. So I'm just going to go directly to the categories and items section, because this is where you would actually create the line items or modify the line items for your budget. So you'll notice under the category section I have all my AICE items listed here, and I'm asking the system to filter out only the AICE line items so I can see them. And they're all separated by their section. So this is what I was talking about with the modified AICE that we have. In reality, in most, and if you search the internet for most AICE budget templates in Excel, they will typically start off down here at the prep section. So this is where AICE officially starts off at. But everything above this, which would actually occurs in the production or the pre-production phase, has actually been taken from AICP to cover basic production. And this creative direction section right here is actually just something that I created to cover pre-production. And the basic structure here is that you're going to have a section header. So in this, for this section right here, this is the creative direction section. And beneath that section, you have a series of line items that makes up this section. So if I actually go in to this section header, you'll see a list of all the child items that, oh, here it is, all the child items that make up that section right there. Each section, in this instance, the creative direction, carries a section code, and each line item will have a budget code. Now that's very important, and we're going to get to why this is important later on. But basically speaking, if you are accustomed to QuickBooks or Sage or any kind of accounting system, you know that for every line item that you have in your items list, they must belong to a specific chart of accounts. So this would almost be like your chart of account right here, saying that, you know, whenever we book this line item on a project, we need to know that it belongs to this specific budget code, because all the summaries will occur via the budget codes. So basically, all items that are budget coded for 0-100 will get summarized under one line item for 0-100. Now I'm going to go out and get out of this header section and actually go into an actual line item. And there's a couple of housekeeping duties that we have to do here. A similar thing again, I have this concept development line item, and I'm saying that it belongs to the 0-100 section, which relates back to the creative direction. And this has a budget code of 0110. Now, if I come out real quick, you'll notice that for each line item that we have, they almost have a unique budget code. And we leave a gap of 10 budget codes. So this one is 0130, this one is 0140, and that basically means that you can add additional line item within the system and have it sort right beneath this guy if you wanted to, or within these two guys right here if you wanted to. So now if I go back to this concept development line item and click on the rates tab for concept development, you'll see that concept development has two rates. There's an hourly rate with no charge amount specified. There's a day rate with no charge amount specified, and there's also an hourly rate with no charge amount specified. Now you can go ahead and create additional rates if you wanted to. We don't actually ship with actual rate numbers because, you know, those rates change sometimes annually, and, you know, we don't want to inundate you with having to change them. So we just leave it up to you to come in and add in your specific rates. And the process of creating an additional rate would just be click on the plus button, specify that it is a regular rate, give the rate a name. Right now it's asking for concept development 3, but I'm actually going to say concept development week. This is specify that this is a weekly rate. And then I'm going to change the unit of measures from hour, which is what it normally defaults to week. And if I wanted to add an amount, this is where I can specify that we charge $1,000 per week for concept development. And that's, you know, that would be the process that you would go through to actually create a rate for a line item. So now, if we scroll down again, you'll see that there's multiple sections. Each section has its own line item. Right now, I'm going to cover how do you actually add a line item into the budget. And that would be, if I wanted to add a line item beneath creative direction, I would just click the plus button, specify that the category is AICE. And the minute you start typing in creative direction, you'll see that, you know, the subcategory for creative direction comes up. And then I'm going to type in Byron's item. Now, I just happen to know that the section code for creative direction is 0100. And because I wanted to sort underneath that 130 item right here, I can give this a code of 01301. And we should see that that Byron's item got inserted right down here. So now that we have a basic understanding as far as how the line items are created and how they relate to their parent item, I'm just going to go out and go into our productions module. And we're going to take a look at this Love Hurts production that I have going on here. And currently, I have this Love Hurts production with 3 episodes on it, episode 1, episode 2, and episode 3. The process of me creating a budget, like let's just say for episode 4, would entail me just specifying that I want to add a new project to the Love Hurts production. So you'll see that Studio Suite, because I was under Love Hurts production, it'll inherit all the properties of that production, the client and the name. And now I just have to specify that this is episode 4. Then I'm going to tell the system that I want to create this in the budget mode. So if you look down here where it says create as budget or create as actual, I'm going to say that I'm in the budget phase. And go ahead. Oh, Joel just reminded me that I forgot to specify that was episode 4. So you can change that after the fact. So what I just did was, I was on the new creation screen and I exited that screen. Now I'm on the actual budget screen for episode 4, and I'm actually changing the name of the project itself. Now there's 2 school of thoughts when you're creating a budget. One, I'm going to click on the Add Items button, and if I actually click on the header sections and actually book the header sections, in Studio Suite we have this concept of an also book. What that says is that if I click on the parent, it'll also book all its children. Now, if you are a full-on production house and you use every single line item on a production, then you can go ahead and do that. That'll be well suited for you. But if you're a smaller type house and you actually only use a couple of line items from each section, I think it's a lot faster to just book the line items that you need. So I'm just going to select these 2 and just go down the list and select the line items that you want. So I'm going to say in the pre-production phase, I need some per diems. I need a casting director. Also need a camera op for production and a sound mixer. We need to rent a camera. Then we're going to do some dailies login and some EDL prep. As far as offline is concerned, let me just filter this out for AICE so I can see all the AICE line items only. So we're going to do some equipment rental, the prep like I said earlier. Then as far as offline is concerned, we're going to do some offline graphics, some data backup and restore, and also we're going to assign a graphics development charge and some archiving. As far as audio is concerned, we're going to do some digital editing of audio. Or actually, let me undo that and specify it's going to be video record, some ADR. Then in the finishing section, we're going to do the final edit and also a generic master. Miscellaneous, we're going to archive to LTO towards as our project is terminating, and also we're going to charge a shipping fee, and we're also going to have an assistant labor under the labor section. Then I'm going to go ahead and add this to my project. You do have the option also to, when you're creating a budget, to add the line items to the project without any dates. Just now, when I clicked on Add to Project, I could have actually easily have picked Add to Project without dates, and that would have added it without any date specification. Then once you actually send it over to the actual side of the project, that's when you can insert the dates. Now, I'm just going to cheat a bit here and just specify that, and just say that we're doing one of each one of these line items, and have the system, because I don't have any rates inside the system, I have a little cheat button that just kind of throws in some random numbers for me. So with that done, you'll see that our project is coming out to $10,600 down here. This, you have the option to email this to the client, or you can print it out. Once that's completed and the client actually approves of this, we can send all these line items over to the budget side. So I'm going to click on Send All to Budget. Send All to Actual, I'm sorry. And the system will go ahead and duplicate each line item and move it over to the actual portion of this project and actualize it for us. So this is where most of our work will be done when we're trying to add resources and specify who's doing what on this specific project, on this specific job. So now that we're on the actual side, because everything came over with the same numbers, the same financial information, I just want to modify that a bit. And so I'm just going to use my little cheat key here again to create a new set of random numbers. And you'll see that we have, our new total is 9,300. So if I go back to the budget we'll see that the budget, we actually budgeted $10,600, but once we actualize the project, it came out to 9,300, which would give us a difference, whatever that difference is between those two. We could actually go to the difference tab here to view the difference between the two modules, which is $1,300. Now that we have a budget and an actual for this specific, for episode 4, this is not necessarily in AICE form. So if I printed this out right now, you'll see that this is just listing all the line items, and it's not necessarily in AICE form. So I'm just going to exit this. So that's actually good for the work order, for in-house purposes. But when you're actually sending it over to the client might want to see it in AICE form. So I'll go back to the production called Love Hurts, click on the Summaries tab, and you'll see like I said earlier, I had 3 episodes already created, which is episode 1, 2, and 3. So now we need to add a 4th episode for episode 4. So I'm going to tell the system that I want to create an AICE summary. And the first question I'm prompted with is this a new summary, or is it a summary based off of an existing project? So I'm going to specify that it is an existing project, and it'll list all the existing projects that are related to this production and also the production itself. So what the Love Hurts production does, or the Love Hurts summary will do, is this will serve as your master budget. So if you are shooting 12 episodes of a specific series, and you want to have, and your master budget is $1 million, and then, or let's just say your master is actually 12 million. That's your targeted budget, and you're shooting for 1 million per episode. Then you would want to have a master budget so you can keep track of how everything is flowing and whether or not you're over or under your specific target. So in this case, I'm going to specify that I want to create a summary for episode 4, an AICE summary for episode 4. And the system will go ahead, gather all the line items for that summary, and upload all the information from the project episode 4. So again, you'll see that on the budget side of episode 4, we budgeted 10,600, and the actual side, it came in as 9,300, and that gave us a difference of $1,300. And this is in AICE form as opposed to what we printed out over on the project side, which was just a list of the line items. Now, I have the option to print this or email this, so I'm going to click on the Print This button. And the email this would work in a similar fashion. If you're used to Studio Suite, you know that the email this is the same as the Print This, except that you have the option to launch your local mail client or have Studio Suite email it out for you. But the PDF would look the same, exactly like how you printed it out. So here's our summary, the summation of that project, of that specific episode. And if I scroll, I can see all the line items that pertain to each section. Let me just zoom in a little bit so everyone can see this. So from the creative direction section, you remember that we only booked 2 line items, and then also from the pre-production section, we only booked another 2 line items. And if we scroll through, we'll see all the sections that we booked and the line items that pertain to those sections. You do have the option here to also print out all the line items underneath that specific section, and the other values for items that you did not use would just be 0. Another thing that you can do is export this to Excel. So if I click on my export button, we have 3 different formats that you can export to. So just the one that I like to use the most is format 2, which it'll look exactly like the one that I showed you just now, where it'll just print out the summary and all the sections and the line items that pertain to those sections beneath the summary. So I'm going to select format 2, and the system will generate an Excel spreadsheet for me, and it'll automatically download to your downloads folder. So if I go into my downloads folder, you'll see again that it just exported the summary with a budget of 10,600 and an actual of 9,300, giving you this difference. And if we scroll down further, you'll see all the line items for that section right here. Again, we can expand this out. Format 1 would expand out each section so it actually shows all the line items for that section and not just the one that was utilized. Once you have your budget and your actual and you're ready to invoice the job, you can go ahead from the summary of this project, episode 4. I can go ahead and say that I want to select all items for invoice, and then it'll go and select all the line items on the actual side of the summary. And again, let me zoom in just so that this can be visible. It'll go ahead and select all the line items on the actual side, and I can say go ahead and invoice the selected items. Yes, I do want to create an invoice. And now we are in our Invoices module, and we just created an invoice based on that AICE summary with, again, the same total for the actual side. A similar deal here is that you can print this out, and this is what the printout for this would look like, or you can email this to the client. Now that would be a 360. Let me just return back to our production module. Oh, the one last thing I want to show before I go into some more detailed explanation as far as some of the functionalities and capabilities that you can do with this budget. I want to show that the Love Hurts master budget previously only included episode 1, episode 2, and episode 3. Now I created episode 4 and I want that to be included, so I just have to return back to just have to click on Love Hurts master production and tell the system to refresh and update its numbers. And if we have the time, we can go through and add the totals for each section from episode 1, 2, and 3, and we would see that the master budget is actually summarizing all those together for us. So as it stands right now, we're a little bit over budget on this entire production by $6,650. So this might be something that we'd want to take into consideration as we're doing our job. So going back to the episode 4 project, once you actualize a budget, this was the initial budget, and we sent it over to the actual side. The next thing you want to do is assign resources to each one of these line items. So for instance, I have my casting director here. I might want to specify who the casting director will be. So if I click on the gear tool next to the casting director line item, you'll see we have this drop down that shows us as operators, and I can specify that Joel Stoner is going to be my casting director. This will automatically populate Joel Stoner's calendar for us so that he knows that he's scheduled to be a casting director on this project. And also, by doing that, if we actually needed multiple casting directors, we can just duplicate that line item. And casting director, if we needed Joel on multiple days, I can say I want to duplicate him on the following day. And you'll see that we have the casting director scheduled for 2 days, one for the 12th and one for the 13th. Now, to every time you duplicate a line item or you change the resources or you change the rate for a line item, one thing that's extremely important that I covered a little bit earlier that I'm going to go into a little bit more is the budget code that that line item is being summarized to. If I hold down Shift and I click on this actual charge tab right here, we'll see all the line items again and their respective budget codes that they belong to. In the case of Joel Stoner, we have him coming in at 04110. And if we go back to the categories and items section, we'll see that 04110 is going to casting director. Sometimes you might have a case where you actually don't want that line item to go to that budget code, and you can actually go in and override it. So if I actually wanted him to go to 04120, for instance, you can just come in here and update this budget code section right here, and that will change where this value of 200 gets summarized to. That would be more in your advanced setup of Studio Suite. when you're swapping people from different positions. So a better example for this would be if you had Joel coming in one day as a casting director, and then you had him coming in another day as a camera op, you're definitely going to want to switch the budget code that his values are getting summarized to. Now I'm going to return back to the productions module. And one of the things that you typically might want to do in Studio Suite is, especially if you're dealing with episodic elements, you might just want to set a basic template. So I actually went ahead, if we go into episode 1, and I flagged episode 1 as a template. What this will allow me to do is that in the future, if I have another episode, let's just say episode 5, that is going to resemble episode 1 and mimic it almost to a T, I can just tell the system that I want to create a new project for this production from a template, and I'll see that episode 1 is listed right here for Big Player Production, and I can specify that I want my new project to be based off of episode 1. Here, all you have to do is change the name. I'm going to say that it's episode 5, and also change the date. So instead of episode 1 was actually shot on the 12th, and if episode 5 is going to be shot on the 19th, I just have to change the date and go ahead and tell it to duplicate that project. As the system is duplicating the project, you'll get a little indicator up here where it says duplicating episode 1. And it starts off with 4 dots, and that's representing 25% markers. And it'll count down all the way to 1. This should take roughly about a minute, because it's actually taking all the line items from the budget side of episode 1 and the line items from the actual side, duplicating those and assigning them to this episode 5 project that we just created. So we'll let that count down. Right now it's at 50% and 25. And it should be telling us that the project has been duplicated. So now we're in the duplicated project of episode 5. And again, because I don't have any rates inside my system, I'm just going to cheat a bit so I can have some different numbers from episode 1 and click on my randomly generated button right here. And also I'm going to do the same thing for the actual side. So if I return back to my production now that I have episode 5, and I needed to generate a summary for episode 5, I would do a similar thing by specifying that I want to create an AICE summary and have it based on a summary of from an existing project. It's episode 5. Click on OK. Our summary is generated, and I'm also going to want to update my master budget to include episode 5, and you'll see the episode 5 numbers just got included. Now let me just refer back to my notes that I had earlier. And so we kind of went over creating resources. We didn't quite go over modifying a line item, so we can do that right now. So what this is talking about is that if I go into the categories and items section, and let's just say, for instance, you say, we don't have an item called Byron's item, so you need to change the name. It would be as simple as going into that line item and changing the name to your favorite item. So from this point forward, whenever you use that line item or you use this section of the AICE budget, it'll reflect your item, but all previous projects that was created with Byron's item will remain the same. Then, so we did kind of go over the master budget and how to have a target goal, and we also covered templates. Simple quote was one thing that we didn't cover, so I'm going to return back to a production. And a simple quote is when you have to, someone calls up and they just need a basic quote, so you just want to throw some numbers in and then base the project from the numbers that you gave the client. You would go to the summaries tab again, and this time I would create a new summary, and instead of saying based off of an existing project, I'm going to say that this is a new summary. give it a name, and I can call it episode 6. And what the system will do at this point is just give you a blank summary. So you have to actually lock this portion of the summary, and you can just free type however much you think the creative direction section will cost you. So I can say, oh, this is going to cost us about $2,500. Pre-production is going to cost me about $3,000, and you'll see that all your totals are being generated immediately for you. And also the production summary the production section will cost me $5,000. And then I'm not going to do any prep, but we are going to do some finishing and audio, and the audio is going to cost me $6,000, and the finishing is going to cost me $7,000. Now this allows you to generate this quote, and I can actually email this to the client. Oops, that was the wrong option there. Let's just say I wanted to export this. I can export that as Excel and then email this basic template without any line items to the client, and it has all your numbers in there for you. And that would cover the simple quote portion of this demo. Let me just go back to my notes again. So we covered the Excel export and also the invoicing. The variance is what we saw earlier when if I was to actually go back to the master budget itself, and you see that you have your budget or your estimated and your actual, and this would be your variance right here. And the markups, I didn't do the markups that much, but I didn't do it at all. So let me just go back to a project. And what the markup is that for those of you who use markup, you already know what I'm going to talk about. But again, if I hold down the Shift key and click on the actual tab to see more information about each line item, you have the option to mark up a line item based on, these are your options, to base it off the existing budget charge, the existing budget expense, the existing actual charge, or the existing actual expense. The two most highly used options are going to be existing budget charge or existing actual expense. And what that would do is, here, I'm going to try to do this as slow as possible. So let me use existing budget charge as an example. And I'm going to specify that I want the system to automatically update so that whenever my budget charge changes, then the line items over here will update automatically. So if we go back to the budget side of this project, we'll see that for the meeting, we were going to charge $400. Now, just to make the numbers a little bit nice, I'm going to make this $1,000. We charge $1,000 to meet with our clients and scope out the project. Then I'm going to go back. I'm going to hold down the Shift key again and click on the actual section so I can see that detail page. And I'm saying that I want to mark up my actual charges based on the budget charge. And I'm going to specify the amount. I'm going to say I want it to be 125%. So I'm going to type in 1.25. So I want 100. So this is essentially a 25% markup. So the minute I click on this checkbox, what the system will do is that it'll go back to the charge portion of the budget, look for this line item, find out how much we're charging for it, and mark it up by that much. And then that should return $1,250. And so you can see how, if you are actually creating a budget and you have a fixed amount in your budget and you want to mark up your entire project by 25%, how this would be useful. But if you actually provide your clients with a firm quote and you need to mark up the expense, you can also do that. So if I go to existing actual expense, the difference here being, if I'm looking at the expenditure cost of anyone, this is probably better illustrated on a person line item, like a director of photography, a DP. So if I say my DP actually charging me $1,000 a day, or he's going to charge me $1,000 to do the shoot, if I hold down Shift and return to the details page for the budget codes, and I say that I want to mark it up 25% off the existing actual expense, and I return back to the director of photography. The minute I turn this on, we'll see the same result where it's $1,250. So this is just marking up whatever your DP actually charges you to what you're actually going to charge a client. So this is what the client will be charged. Now we can return back to the production, and because we actually changed our numbers, the summaries are not a live update, so you actually have to come back and update each individual, whichever project it is that you was working on. And I think we were working on episode 1 just now, so I'm just gonna unlock this and update this, and those numbers should be refreshed. Let me go back to my notes again. So that covers markups, and we already saw how the email PDF is the same as printing, but you just choose the email option. And reports. With the reports, if you're familiar with Studio Suite, you would know that for every line item that's actually on a project, you can go to the Reports tab and click on Other Reports options from Events, and you can run a report on that production. If, for instance, I can say my production was Love Hurts, and I'm just going to specify this year. And this will break it down for you by episode, so you can see what each episode is doing as a whole. And just about all of our reports, you can either print them out, export it to Excel, and also email them, create a PDF and email those reports also. Let's return back to the production. So when you're looking at this global view right here, again, just as a quick review, what we're seeing is that this Love Hurts production has 5 episodes now, but these are 5 actual episodes that are affiliated with this production. But if I go to the summary, you'll notice that I have 6 episodes, but the 6th one is not really a project yet. It's only a quote that we sent to the client. And if the client approved this quote, then we can proceed and actually create the project for that quote. And one of the things that I want to go over a little bit farther is that are the budget codes that are affiliated with each line item and how they actually move from the definition of the line item to the definition of the rates, and also the creation of the event on the project. So for instance, if we're looking at, let's just return back to the categories and items section. And if we're looking at the concept development, let's not use concept development, but I'm going to use the camera operator. So if I'm looking at the camera operator line item, at the point of creation, when I created the camera operator, I specified that it had a budget code of 0640. So by default, whenever I create a rate, that rate is going to also assign itself a budget code of 0640. And when we add this camera op line item to a project, so I'm just going to go back out and go to a project. Whenever we add a camera op line item to the project, it will inherit that budget code from the rate and add it right here. Now, if for some reason this is blank or empty, you have to make sure that you always come back to this view and make sure that each line item has its appropriate budget code, or else you'll be summarizing values in different budget codes or different accounts that you don't want to, and you don't want to be doing that, because your values will be incorrect, basically speaking. But that is extremely important that you have that portion right, and that's the reason why I was saying earlier that if you have a custom budget, coming up with a section code and a budget code is something that you want to take your time with, so that everything sorts and summarizes appropriately, because all the summation is based on is strictly based on your budget code. So again, if you've used any kind of accounting system before, like Sage or QuickBooks, you'll know that if you don't put the right line item in the right chart of accounts, then your numbers will end up all over the place. And as far as the setup is concerned for custom budgets and custom templates, it's fairly simple to create a header and associate child items to the header, issue budget codes, and once you do that, you're pretty much ready to go with the system. And I would say that would conclude the presentation of the budgets and quoting inside Studio Suite. And the demo version is available online. You can go ahead and grab one of those, either the runtime or a full install of a demo, if you want to see what it would feel like in your network environment. You can grab both of those at studiosuite.com also. Okay, cheers.